Okay, seriously, you need to stop what you're doing. Right now. Because what I'm about to show you about the wild weather coming in the next 48 hours is going to mess with how you think about spring skies. This isn't just another chance for a few thunderstorms. We're looking at something that could be the worst severe weather outbreak we've seen since that terrible tornado swarm in December 2021 that tore through the middle of the country. The setup in the atmosphere for this is so insane, you'll seriously wonder if your family is ready for what's coming. We're talking about 14 states in the danger zone, over 50 million people potentially in the path, and a real chance for a bunch of really strong, long-lasting tornadoes. And here's what's really going to get you. The Storm Prediction Center is already using language that forecasters usually save for the absolute scariest days. I mean, a day where everything lines up so perfectly that destruction isn't just a possibility, it's pretty much a sure thing. This thing is a powder keg, and that spark is on its way. Before we dive into this tornado threat, remember, everything I'm sharing comes from my 4-2-page self-sufficient garden blueprint. The link's in the description, and there's a QR code on your screen. If you're watching on TV, scan that code with your phone. Get that blueprint. Now it's very important, folks. Thousands of people have it. Don't miss it. Drop your city and state in the comments right now. I want you all to see how far and wide this threat is, and I want to help you understand the specific dangers for your spot as this unfolds over the next 48 hours. Because what's coming isn't one storm, it's a whole bunch of them, an outbreak. If you think I'm just hyping this up, you're dead wrong. What's about to happen will make all the recent storms look like nothing. This is going to be a multi-day event, and today's just the start. Before I show you the crazy model data and explain why this weather pattern is unlike anything we've seen in years, please hit that like button. Seriously, do it now. If you want to stay safe in a life-threatening situation like this, your engagement actually helps us get this crucial information out to people whose lives could depend on it. Let me try to explain what's going on high above your head right now. It's like a huge fight happening with the weather across the whole continent. We've got this giant dip in the jet stream, a big trough, digging deep into the western US. Picture it as a huge shovel, pulling cold, dry air from the Rockies. At the same time, this ridiculously powerful low-level jet stream is blasting north from the Gulf of Mexico. It's like a fire hose of warm, tropical moisture. We're talking dew points. That's how much moisture is in the air, getting up into the upper 60s and even low 70s. That's summer-level humidity, folks, in the middle of spring. When that cold, dry air up high crashes into that warm, wet air down low, you get an explosion. That crash is what we call instability. It's the gas for the fire. Meteorologists measure this with something called CAPE, or convective available potential energy. Anything over 1,000 joules per kilogram is enough for a strong storm. Over 2,000 is good instability. But the models for this event are showing CAPE values shooting past 3,000, 4,000, and in some small spots, even pushing 5,000 joules per kilogram. 5,000. That's not just fuel, that's rocket fuel. That's the kind of energy that doesn't just make thunderstorms, it builds monsters. It builds rotating supercells that can last for hours and travel hundreds of miles. But fuel is only part of the recipe for disaster. You need one more key ingredient: wind shear. And this is the part of the forecast that has meteorologists holding their breath. Wind shear is when the wind changes speed and direction as you go higher up. Imagine you're on the ground, and a warm, humid wind is blowing from the south at 20 miles an hour. But just a few thousand feet up, the wind is screaming out of the west at 70 miles an hour. That difference creates a rolling motion in the atmosphere, horizontally. The strong updrafts in these brewing storms then grab that roll and tilt it upright. And that, my friends, is how a mesocyclone is born. That's the spinning heart of a supercell. That's what drives a tornado. The shear values we're seeing for this event are, well, extreme. We're talking about 60, 70, even 80 knots of deep layer shear. That doesn't just support tornadoes, it supports violent tornadoes, the kind that stay on the ground for dozens of miles, the kind that grow into massive, churning wedges a mile wide. This is what the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma is watching right now. They're the best severe storm forecasters in the country, and when they warn you, you listen. They've already marked out a huge enhanced risk area, which is a level 3 out of 5, but don't let enhanced fool you. Inside that area, they've highlighted spots where the threat is way, way higher, and they've issued what they call a particularly dangerous situation, tornado watch. Let's be super clear about what that means. A PDS tornado watch isn't like a normal watch. It's an emergency alert they use for the rarest, most unstable weather setups. It's when the top government weather experts are telling you, we think there's a big chance of multiple strong to violent long-track tornadoes in this area. When they put out a PDS watch, they're basically screaming that you shouldn't take any chances. This is a day that could produce a historic tornado, the kind of tornado that ends up with a name. Think Joplin, Moore, Tuscaloosa, Hackleburg. Let's look at the timing. Day 1 is already happening. The first wave of supercells is expected to pop up late this afternoon across parts of eastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, and western Arkansas. This is when storms will fire in the warm sector, where individual supercells will have all the atmosphere's energy to themselves. These are the most dangerous. They don't have to compete for fuel. They can grow into perfect classic supercells with terrifying hook echoes on radar. This is where the conditions are most extreme, where CAPE and shear are overlapping in what meteorologists call a loaded gun situation. The gun is loaded, it's cocked, and the trigger is about to be pulled as the sun starts to go down. But wait, there's even more, and this is where it gets even crazier. As this first wave moves east, the storms are expected to merge into a squall line, a quasi-linear convective system, or QLCS. Now, you might think a line of storms is less dangerous than a single supercell. You'd be totally wrong. Buried inside these squall lines, we often see smaller scale rotations, what we call QLCS tornadoes. These tornadoes appear incredibly fast. They can be on the ground and then gone in minutes, giving you almost no warning. They're often hidden by rain, completely invisible, until they're right on top of you. And they're infamous for showing up after dark. Tonight, a huge roaring squall line is expected to sweep across Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and into western Tennessee and Alabama. We're talking about a line of storms that could bring 80 mile-per-hour straight-line winds, baseball-sized hail, and a constant risk of those quick-forming tornadoes. All in the dead of night. Our brains just aren't wired to deal with a tornado warning at 2 a.m. You're asleep. You're confused. The sirens might not even be loud enough over the wind and rain. That's why having several ways to get warnings isn't just a good idea. It's life or death. A NOAA weather radio, an app on your phone that will literally wake you up. You need these things. Because the threat doesn't stop tonight. Not even close. Day 2 of this outbreak is expected to be even bigger and potentially more dangerous. As the whole system moves east, the main target area will shift. We're talking about a huge warm sector opening up across Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and the Florida Panhandle. This is Dixie Alley, a place known for strong, fast-moving tornadoes in tricky terrain, often hidden by trees and hills. The ingredients for Day 2 look just as strong, maybe even stronger. Another powerful low-level jet will pump even more Gulf moisture north. The instability will be catastrophic, and the wind shear profiles, again, are through the roof. The Storm Prediction Center is already hinting that a high risk, which is the highest threat level possible, might be needed for parts of this region tomorrow. Let's talk about what a high-risk day actually means. Since 1990, the SPC has issued a high risk on less than 3% of spring days. But those few days account for almost 50% of all tornado deaths. That's how serious a high-risk warning is. It means widespread, major, and life-threatening severe weather is expected. We're talking about a possible tornado outbreak, not just one or two, but dozens, and among them, a high chance of EF2 to EF5 tornadoes. Here's something really interesting about the weather patterns we're seeing. There's something called a capped environment. Right now, there's a layer of warm air up high, acting like a lid on a pot of boiling water, stopping storms from forming. This might sound good, but it's not. It's allowing the air at the surface to get hotter and more humid, building up even more explosive energy under that cap. When that cap finally breaks or erodes later today, it'll be like taking the lid off the pot all at once. Storms will explode. We'll go from clear skies to violent, rotating thunderstorms in less than an hour. That's how fast things can crash. Now, let's get into the details, because understanding the science is one thing, but knowing if a monster is coming for your backyard is another. We're going to break down these dangerous storms and then look at past events like this, because history, folks, is the scariest forecast of all. A tornado isn't just wind. To really get the threat, you have to understand the level of destruction we're talking about. The enhanced Fujita scale, or EF scale, is what we use to rate them. But the numbers don't tell you the whole story. An EF0 or an EF1, with winds from 65 to 110 miles per hour, is what most people think of as a tornado. It'll rip shingles off roofs, break big tree branches, and can flip a mobile home. Dangerous, for sure. But it's not what has forecasters so worried today. We start getting into a whole other league at EF2 and EF3. At EF2, with winds up to 135 miles per hour, whole roofs are torn off well-built homes. Mobile homes are completely destroyed. Big trees are snapped or pulled out of the ground. And EF3, with winds hitting 165 miles per hour, is a serious tornado. It'll rip the outside walls off sturdy houses. It can flip trains. It throws heavy cars around like toys. Surviving a direct hit from an EF3 isn't a guarantee, even in a strong house. And then there's the top of the scale, EF4 and EF5. This is what we call a violent tornado. This is what this weather setup can produce. An EF4, with winds up to 200 miles per hour, means well-built houses are flattened. Cars are thrown really far. Buildings with weak foundations are just blown away. The idea of unsurvivable without underground shelter starts to become a horrifying reality. An EF5 is like a force of nature we can barely comprehend. Winds over 200 miles per hour. Strong frame houses aren't just flattened, they're swept clean from their foundations. Steel-reinforced concrete structures are seriously damaged. The destruction is total. It can rip pavement off a road. It can strip bark from trees. It creates a level of damage that's hard for the human mind to grasp. The last EF5 to hit the United States was in Moore, Oklahoma, on May 20th, 2013. The weather conditions that day, the cape, the shear, the moisture are terrifyingly similar to what we're seeing in the models for the next 48 hours. Think about that. Now, let's talk about the different kinds of tornadoes you might see. The classic cone or rope tornado is what most people picture, but with all the moisture and the intense updrafts in this setup, we're much more likely to see wedge tornadoes. A wedge is a tornado that's at least as wide as it is tall. They often look like a massive, dark wall of cloud, churning along the ground. They don't look like a funnel. They look like the end of the world, because they're so huge, they can swallow up entire neighborhoods at once. The Joplin, Missouri, tornado of 2011, which killed 158 people, was a massive, multi-vortex wedge. The El Reno, Oklahoma, tornado of 2013, the widest tornado ever recorded at 2.6 miles wide, was a terrifying, chaotic wedge. These storms also have the chance to be multi-vortex. This is one big tornado that has smaller, even stronger suction vortices spinning inside it. These smaller vortices are where the worst damage happens. One house might be leveled, while the one next to it is only damaged, because one got hit by a suction vortex, and the other didn't. This is why you hear survivors say it sounded like a dozen freight trains all at once. They're hearing the multiple vortices of a monster storm. To see what the meteorologists are seeing, you need to look at hodographs. A hodograph is a complicated graph that shows wind speed and direction at different heights in the atmosphere. To a normal person, it looks like a confusing mess of lines. To a meteorologist, it tells a story. And the stories these hodographs are telling right now are chilling. They're showing long, curved lines that loop back on themselves in the lower parts of the atmosphere. That classic sickle shape is the sign of an environment ready for strong, long-lasting supercells that move to the right and are really good at making tornadoes. This isn't just a chance of a tornado. This is exactly what an atmosphere looks like when it's built to create them. What's more, we're seeing a very powerful, low-level jet. This is like a river of fast-moving air just a few thousand feet off the ground. A strong, low-level jet does two things. First, it constantly feeds the storms with warm, moist fuel. Second, it really bumps up the low-level shear, which is the key thing for making the rotation tight, strong, and able to reach the ground. The models are showing a 60 to 70 knot low-level jet slamming right into the warm sector. That's absolutely explosive. If this breakdown is actually helping you understand how serious what's happening is, then subscribe to this channel right now and tap that notification bell. When an outbreak like this is going on, you need every single forecast update, every bit of information, to make choices that could quite literally save your life or your family's lives. We'll be covering this non-stop through the event. Now, let's put this into perspective. The atmosphere doesn't remember things, but weather patterns do repeat. The specific mix of ingredients we're seeing today has happened before. And the results were awful. Let's talk about the Super Outbreak from April 25 to 28, 2011. In those 4 days, 360 tornadoes were confirmed, including 15 unbelievably strong EF4 and EF5 tornadoes. 324 people died. The weather setup was almost exactly the same. A really strong, deep upper-level trough, a ton of Gulf moisture with dew points in the 70s, and extreme amounts of instability and wind shear. On April 27th, the SPC took the rare step of issuing a high risk for parts of the southeast. They warned of a high-end, life-threatening tornado outbreak, and they were right. The Hackleburg, Alabama EF5 stayed on the ground for 132 miles. The Tuscaloosa, Birmingham EF4 was 1.5 miles wide and killed 64 people. The models today are showing conditions that are disturbingly similar to that tragic day. Or, let's go back further. The Super Outbreak of the 3rd of April, 1974. In 24 hours, 148 tornadoes ripped through 13 states, killing 319 people. It was an event that really stuck with a whole generation. The big picture weather pattern, the large-scale weather map for the 1974 outbreak, looks eerily similar to the pattern forming right now. That day, meteorologists saw what was coming, but the technology to warn people was basic. No Doppler radar, no particularly dangerous situation warnings. Tornado warnings often came after someone actually saw a funnel. Today, we have the technology. We can see the rotation inside the storm. We can give people precious minutes of lead time. But that technology is useless if you don't have a plan and don't take action. So what does all this mean moving forward? It means the next 48 hours are incredibly important. This isn't the time to relax. This isn't the time to wait and see. This is the time to prepare. It's time to review your tornado safety plan. Where's the safest spot in your home? It's the lowest level, in an inside room, away from windows. A basement is best. A closet or bathroom on the ground floor of a sturdy home is the next best option. Put on a helmet, bike helmet, football helmet, whatever you have. It could save your life from head injuries, which is the main cause of death in tornadoes. Get in the bathtub and pull a mattress over you. These aren't silly suggestions. These are proven ways to survive. Now, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to tour the danger zones. I'm going to break this down, region by region, state by state, so you know exactly what to expect and why your area is at risk. We're going to start in the middle of classic Tornado Alley, and then we're going to follow this monster eastward into the thick, dangerous forests of Dixie Alley. Let's start in Oklahoma and Kansas. The Sooner State and the Sunflower State. This is where tornadoes have historically happened the most. A place with huge, open prairies where you can see a storm coming from 50 miles away. But that clear view can make you dangerously overconfident. The first wave of supercells is set to fire up along the dry line that's the boundary between the wet Gulf air to the east and the dry desert air to the west, which will be over western Oklahoma and the Texas Panhandle. This afternoon, this is where we'll see those impressive, isolated supercells. The city of Moore, Oklahoma, a suburb of Oklahoma City, is arguably the most tornado-battered city on Earth. It's been hit by multiple violent tornadoes, including EF5S in 1999 and 2013. The 1,999 Bridge Creek Moore tornado was the storm where the highest wind speeds ever recorded on Earth were measured by a mobile Doppler radar, 302 miles per hour. That's not a typo. 302 miles per hour. It killed 36 people. Then, in 2013, another monster, EF5, carved a 17-mile long, 13-mile wide path of total destruction through the city, killing 24 people, including 7 children who were trying to shelter in the Plaza Towers Elementary School, which took a direct hit. The school didn't have a tornado-safe room built in. The weather conditions for today's event in central Oklahoma are looking close to what they were on both of those tragic days. If you're in Oklahoma City, Norman, Moore, Tulsa, you need to be extremely alert. This isn't a drill. Moving north into Kansas, it's pretty much the same story. Kansas is the state that gave us the Wizard of Oz, but its tornado history is anything but a fairy tale. On May 4th, 2007, the town of Greensburg was hit by an EF5 tornado. It was the first tornado to be rated EF5 on the new enhanced Fujita scale. This monster was 1.7 miles wide and stayed on the ground for almost 22 miles. And get this, it completely destroyed 95% of the town. 95%. It was wiped off the map. 11 people died. The only reason more weren't killed is because residents got an incredible 20 minutes of warning from the National Weather Service in Dodge City, who saw the classic debris ball signature on radar and knew this was a killer storm. The threat for south-central Kansas today is significant, with all kinds of severe weather, huge hail, damaging winds, and strong tornadoes on the table. But the real story of this outbreak, folks, is how it moves east into much more dangerous areas. Let's talk about Dixie Alley. Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. This region is a meteorologist's worst nightmare. Why? First, tornadoes here are often fast-moving. The jet stream winds are stronger, so the storms themselves rocket across the landscape at 50, 60, even 70 miles per hour. That gives you way less time to react. Second, the terrain. Unlike flat plains, Dixie Alley is covered in hills and thick forests. You can't see an incoming tornado. You're completely relying on radar, sirens, and your weather radio. Third, there are more people living there. More people, more homes, and more towns directly in the path. Fourth, and this is the scariest part, is how often tornadoes happen at night here. For reasons still being researched, the Southeast sees a statistically higher percentage of tornadoes that happen after the sun goes down. A nighttime tornado is more than twice as likely to be deadly as one that happens during the day. The squall line expected to rip across this region tonight is the perfect setup for producing these fast, rain-wrapped, nocturnal killers. Let's focus on Mississippi and Alabama. This is the absolute bullseye for day 2 of the outbreak, the heart of Dixie Alley. This region has a long and tragic history. On the 27th of April, 2011, this area was the center of the deadliest tornado outbreak in recent American history. That day started with the SPC issuing that rare high risk. Meteorologists on local TV stations in Alabama were literally begging people to get to their shelters. They knew what was coming. Enjoying this? The blueprint has 9 more systems, similar to this, like the 4,000-year-old self-watering method, the nitrogen factory that makes free fertilizer forever, and the Three Sisters technique that tripled my friend's corn harvest. It's 42 pages, just $17 today, and comes with a 30-day guarantee. The link is below, or if you're watching on TV, scan the QR code with your phone. The Tuscaloosa-Birmingham EF4 tornado left a scar across the state that was even visible from space. It stayed on the ground for 80 miles. It was up to 1.5 miles wide. It tore through the middle of Tuscaloosa, a city of 100,000 people, home to the University of Alabama. It was a multi-vortex beast that moved through dense urban neighborhoods. It killed 64 people and injured 1,500. The damage was estimated at $2.4 billion, making it the most expensive tornado in U.S. history at the time. Just a few hours later, on the same day, the Hackleburg EF5 formed. It traveled 132 miles from Alabama into Tennessee. It wiped out the towns of Hackleburg and Phil Campbell. It killed 72 people and was the deadliest single tornado of the entire 2011 outbreak. What forecasters are seeing for tomorrow is a chilling reminder of that day. The numbers for shear and instability are almost an exact match. The low-level jet is expected to be just as strong. The position of the dry line and the warm front are all lining up in a way that suggests a repeat performance isn't just possible, but frighteningly likely. The message from the National Weather Service office in Birmingham is clear. Have a plan and be ready to act. This has the potential to be a significant, life-threatening event. They don't use words like that lightly, folks. Let's move east, into Georgia and Tennessee. The threat here is also super high, especially for the northern half of Georgia and eastern Tennessee. This region falls into a dangerous transition zone. It's far enough east to still get that potent Gulf moisture, but it's also close enough to the Appalachian Mountains to have incredibly complex wind patterns. These mountains can sometimes break up storms, but they can also make them worse, creating local areas of extreme shear on the downwind side of the ridges. Nashville, Tennessee, experienced this firsthand on the 3rd of March 2020. A violent EF4 tornado ripped through the city in the middle of the night. It hit at 1 a.m. It killed 25 people along its 60-mile path. It caused $1.6 billion in damage. It was a classic Dixie Alley nightmare, a strong tornado moving at 60 miles per hour in the dark through a major city. The setup for this event means a similar nighttime threat for the Nashville area and all of Middle Tennessee. You absolutely must have your weather radio on, with a fresh battery, set to alarm before you go to bed tonight. It's your best, and possibly only, defense. Even the Carolinas and the Florida Panhandle aren't in the clear. As the cold front keeps pushing eastward on day 3, it will still bring a line of severe storms. While the overall tornado threat might be lower by then, the risk of damaging straight-line winds and isolated fast-forming tornadoes will still be very real, all the way to the Atlantic coast. This is a true coast-to-coast system, a monster of continental proportions. We're talking about a storm system so huge it's causing blizzard conditions in the northern plains on its cold side, while simultaneously generating violent tornadoes in the deep south on its warm side. That contrast tells you everything about the incredible energy involved. Let me show you something that's absolutely wild. The advanced computer models, like the HRRR, High Resolution Rapid Refresh, can simulate what the radar might look like hours ahead of time. And the simulated radar images coming out for this evening are some of the most unnerving I've ever seen in my career. They show not one, but multiple, distinct supercells with those classic hook echo shapes, moving across eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas. These are the models practically screaming that tornado formation is about to happen. The models are painting pictures of textbook, violent supercells. When the computer models are this confident, this aggressive, it's a huge emergency for forecasters. This isn't a close call. This is the atmosphere announcing its intentions, loud and clear. We're entering the most dangerous part of this event. The next 12 hours, from late afternoon through the night, are when things are most risky. The sun is the trigger. As it starts to go down, the surface cools a bit, but the air just above it stays warm and buoyant. This breaks the cap, letting loose the fury that's been building up all day. The period from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. is statistically the most likely time for tornadoes to form. And for this event, that's the window we're watching for those initial, violent supercells in the western part of the risk area. Then, from 10 p.m. until dawn, the threat shifts east with that terrifying nighttime squall line. I want to take a minute to talk about what happens after the storm, because the tornado itself is just the start of the nightmare. If you're lucky enough to survive a direct hit from a violent tornado, your world is gone. Everything is gone. Your home, your car, your stuff, the familiar landmarks in your neighborhood, the trees you climbed as a kid, all reduced to a messy, unrecognizable pile of debris mixed with what's left of your neighbors' lives. The silence right after a tornado passes is something survivors always talk about. That deafening roar is replaced by an eerie, unnatural quiet, soon broken by the smell of rain-soaked earth and splintered wood, the drip of water, and then the cries for help. This is where the story changes from weather science to human tragedy. Let's talk about Joplin, Missouri, May 22nd, 2011. A massive EF5 wedge tornado, over a mile wide, stayed on the ground for 22 miles, and 6 of those miles went right through the center of the city. It was a Sunday afternoon. People were home, shopping, graduating. The tornado hit St. John's Regional Medical Center. It moved the entire 9-story, steel-reinforced concrete building 4 inches off its foundation. They had to tear it down. 158 people died. 7,500 homes were destroyed. Over 2,000 buildings were flattened. The debris was so widespread that the Army Corps of Engineers had to remove 1.5 million cubic yards of rubble. Think about that. 1.5 million cubic yards. Enough to fill a football field 300 feet high. The economic cost was almost $3 billion, but the human cost was impossible to measure. The emotional scars on that community are still healing over a decade later. PTSD is common among survivors and first responders. People who lived through it are still terrified of thunderstorms. Every time the sky gets dark, the trauma comes rushing back. The sound is what they remember. The freight train comparison doesn't do it justice. Survivors describe it as a physical presence, a deafening, vibrating roar that you feel in your bones, mixed with the high-pitched shriek of metal being ripped apart and the explosive pop of homes falling apart. Recovering from something like this takes years, if not decades. It's a slow, painful process. First come the search and rescue teams, picking through the debris for survivors. Then come the disaster relief groups, providing food, water, and temporary shelter. Then, the insurance adjusters show up, and the long, frustrating battles begin. Many people are underinsured. They find out their policies don't cover the full cost of rebuilding, or that they don't cover clearing debris. Businesses are gone forever. The city's tax base is crippled. Rebuilding a town from scratch is a huge undertaking. Greensburg, Kansas, the town that was 95% destroyed by an EF 5 inches 2007, made the brave choice to rebuild as a green town, a model of sustainability. It's an inspiring story, but it was a long, tough road. Joplin has also largely rebuilt, but it's a different city now. Many of the people who lived there before the storm never came back. The fabric of the community was ripped apart, and it takes generations to knit it back together. When we talk about a high-risk day, this is what's at stake. It's not just about the weather. It's about the potential for an American town to be completely and utterly destroyed. Now, let's look at how this impacts infrastructure. Tornadoes don't just destroy homes. They mess up the systems that keep our society running. A violent tornado can snap high-voltage transmission towers like they're toothpicks. These are those giant steel towers that carry electricity over long distances. They aren't easy to replace. A major tornado outbreak can cause a huge power failure, plunging millions into darkness. not for hours, but for days or even weeks. This is especially dangerous if it's also really hot or really cold. Without power, there's no air conditioning, no heat, no way to keep food or medicine refrigerated. The power outage maps after the December 2021 tornado outbreak looked like a war zone. The long-track EF4 that tore across 4 states, including devastating Mayfield, Kentucky, destroyed the entire power grid for multiple counties. Some residents were without power for over a month. In the middle of winter, the utility companies basically had to rebuild the grid from scratch. Think about how complicated that is. Getting thousands of new poles, miles of new wire, and hundreds of crews into a disaster zone where all the roads are blocked by debris. It's a logistical nightmare. And what happens if a tornado hits a hospital like in Joplin, or a chemical plant, or a water treatment facility? The failures can just keep piling up. The 2013 Moore EF5 barely missed a major oil and gas storage facility. If it had hit that, the result could have been a massive, toxic fire on top of the tornado devastation. These are the secondary and tertiary effects that emergency managers dread. This is why they're taking this threat so seriously. They're getting resources ready, putting search and rescue teams on standby, and working with power companies. They're getting ready for the worst-case scenario, because the atmosphere is telling them that the worst-case scenario is definitely possible. Now, let's look ahead. Is this kind of extreme weather happening more often? The science is complicated, but there are some worrying signs. While it's tough to directly connect any single weather event to climate change, we do know that a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture. More moisture means more fuel for storms. We're seeing higher dew points further north, earlier in the season. That's a fact. That extra fuel can make severe storms more intense and bring heavier rain. There's also more and more research suggesting that Tornado Alley, the usual area where tornadoes are frequent, might be moving. Studies have shown fewer tornado days in the traditional plains states, and a noticeable increase in states in the southeast Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee. Basically, Dixie Alley is getting more active. This is a horrifying trend for all the reasons we've talked about: the hilly land, the trees, the higher population density, and how common nighttime tornadoes are. All make this region much more vulnerable. The deadliest tornadoes are happening in a part of the country that's seeing more of them. That's a recipe for disaster. What's also changing is how variable things are. We seem to be getting fewer days with tornadoes overall, but on the days when we do get them, we get a lot of them. The activity is becoming more concentrated into these massive outbreak days. We have these long, quiet periods which can make people complacent, and then bam, a huge multi-state outbreak. This all-or-nothing pattern makes forecasting and public safety even tougher. But there is good news. We're way better at forecasting these events now. In 1974, during that Super Outbreak, the idea of a tornado warning with more than a few minutes of lead time was a fantasy. Today, thanks to Doppler radar, we can literally see the storm rotating inside. Dual polarization radar has taken it even further. Dual pol, as it's called, sends out both horizontal and vertical radar beams. This lets meteorologists see the shape and size of what's in the air. Raindrops are round. Hailstones are jagged, and the chaotic mix of dirt, wood, and metal thrown up by a tornado has a very specific, identifiable signature. This is the debris ball, or Tornado Debris Signature, TDS. When a meteorologist sees a TDS on radar, they know 100% for sure that there's a tornado on the ground, causing damage. This lets them issue confirmed tornado warnings, which makes people take them more seriously. The average warning time for a tornado today is about 13 minutes. For the Joplin tornado, it was 20 minutes. For the Moore tornado, it was 16 minutes for the first warning, and an incredible 36 minutes before it hit the most populated areas. Those precious minutes save lives. Supercomputers have also completely changed weather modeling. Models like the HRRR and the European model can predict how likely and how strong severe weather will be, with an accuracy that would have seemed like science fiction 30 years ago. They let us see these outbreaks coming days in advance. giving emergency services and the public crucial time to get ready. But again, the best forecast in the world is pointless if people don't get the message or don't act on it. This brings us back to us, the human factor. Complacency is the biggest killer in a tornado outbreak. People hear a siren and think, "It's probably nothing," or "It won't happen to me." They go outside to look. They try to get a video on their phone. These are all potentially deadly mistakes. When a warning is issued for your area, it's not a suggestion. It's an urgent command to take shelter immediately. You might only have seconds. Have a go bag ready. A small backpack with copies of your important papers, a first aid kit, essential medications, water, and a portable phone charger. If your home disappears, you'll walk away with nothing but the clothes on your back. Having that bag could make a huge difference in the first few hours after the disaster. So, let's tie this all back to the next 48 hours. The gun is loaded, the ingredients are all there, the atmosphere is ready for an explosion. Today, the focus is on eastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana, with the threat of violent, long-lasting supercells this afternoon and a dangerous nighttime squall line moving east. Tomorrow, the bullseye shifts to Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, with the potential for a historic tornado outbreak, possibly getting a high risk from the Storm Prediction Center. I'm asking you, I'm begging you, to take this seriously. Check on your friends and family in these areas. Make sure they have a plan. Make sure their weather radios are on. Share this video. Share the information from the National Weather Service. You doing so could be the one thing that gets a warning to someone who otherwise wouldn't have known. This is a team effort. We all have a responsibility to look out for each other when such a big threat is right here. The sky will look deceivingly calm in many of these areas this morning. It might even be sunny and warm. Don't let that fool you. That is the calm before the storm, in the most literal sense. That sunshine is what's heating the ground, creating the instability, and adding more fuel to the fire. Things will get bad with terrifying speed this afternoon. I want you to answer a question for me in the comments. What's your family's tornado safety plan? Do you have one? Do you practice it? Let's talk honestly about being ready, because it's the one thing we can control when facing nature's most violent fury. I'll be here, tracking this system every step of the way. We'll have live updates as warnings come out. We'll be analyzing the radar. We'll be here to help you get through this. But you have to do your part. You have to be ready. If today's video helped you, you'll love the complete blueprint. It has 10 zero-cost gardening systems, 2 bonus chapters, and a full 9-0-day action plan. Just $17 today, normally $97. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. Scan the QR code, click the link in the description, or go to greenhavenvault.shop. Start with Chapter 1, the 3-0, Second Dead Soil Fix. Your soil will be transformed in 30 days. If you're watching on TV, just scan that QR code with your mobile. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. Pay attention to the weather. I'll see you in the next one.